Liberty Nation. Truth is making a comeback.
Hello, welcome to Liberty Nation's Liberty Nation TV. I'm your host, Mark Angelides, and today we're going to take a tough look at what's really happening with the Parklands kids movement, the people behind it, and what impact the grassroots marches are actually having. To help us with this, we have the sublime wit and wisdom of Mr. Jeff Charles, who has written a deep dive article on this topic titled "The Parkland Shooting Survivors the Media Doesn't Want You to Know About." So, hi Jeff.
Hey Mark, how's it going?
Good, thank you. So Jeff, your article covers the unknown students of Parkland who are actually trying to express pro-gun views. What does the lack of media coverage for these youngsters actually tell us?
It tells us nothing that we don't already know. The establishment media has a left-wing agenda here. They have for decades. So on the left, they are very much about gun control. So it makes sense that they would choose to highlight mainly the students who are against the Second Amendment.
Okay. So I mean, we hear a lot about the the impassioned and the strong characters that are favored by the left, but not so much about the well-informed characters like Kyle Cashew. So could you tell us what makes him different from the other Parkland students like the David Hoggs and the Emma Gonzalez?
Oh, yeah, he's not impassioned enough, so that's the difference, according to the left. But to sensible people, the main difference is that he's not for gun control. He's a strong supporter of the Second Amendment, as is his entire family. And as far as being informed, if you put David Hogg next to Kyle Cashew, if you were to watch their interviews, of course, Hogg's going to have a lot more interviews because he's on the gun control side. But there is a distinct difference between the level of knowledge that each has on the issue. David Hogg's arguments are not logical. They really aren't arguments at all. They're really just a bunch of name calling, calling people child murderers. He's lashed out against Laura Ingraham, Dana Lash, Senator Marco Rubio, and pretty much anybody who disagrees with them. We're all child murderers who like it when children die. That pretty much sums up David Hogg's argument. On the other hand, you have Kyle Cashew, who is very well informed on the issue. He doesn't argue with using a lot of emotion. He uses a lot of statistics, facts. He knows this issue much better than David Hogg does. Now, are either of these people policy experts? No, but you can clearly see who has done their research and who knows their stuff. Yeah.
Yep. So straight question here, Jeff. Among the youngsters, who's in the majority? The pro-Second Amendment or the gun control?
Right now, the majority of people who are young, like high school age, early college, they are very much pro-Second Amendment.
Okay.
And it's not to say that they're not open to the idea of gun laws. The issue with them isn't gun laws. The issue is practical solutions to stop mass shootings and gun violence in general. The left isn't really focusing on gun violence in general. They're focusing mainly on mass shootings because of the shooting at the high school in Parkland, Florida, but also because it's a more explosive issue. So most young people agree with the rest of America. They know that gun control legislation, additional legislation, is not going to decrease the number of people who die in mass shootings. Instead, they favor solutions such as better training for first responders, for police officers. The overwhelming majority of Americans support enhanced security in our high schools, which makes sense. We have security in our libraries, in our movie theaters. Pretty much everywhere we go, we're going to see security guards, except in our high schools where our children attend.
That is pretty curious, isn't it? That this is almost the only place where they're not. Why do you think so many of the, let's call them the visible youth, are for gun control? Because from what I can see, that these visible youth, they don't really know what they're talking about. Their arguments to me seem as you mentioned earlier, not really arguments at all, more sort of impassioned pleas. So why are they so visible?
Well, they're visible because the media wants them to be. That's the first reason. And it's not clear whether these students were pro-gun control before the shooting. I'm not sure that any of them have actually come out and discussed that. I know with Kyle Kashuv, his family has always been pro-Second Amendment. But I'm not sure if these students on the gun control side just basically woke up to this issue because of what happened to them, which obviously is tragic, and it's going to make anybody want to consider what's going to prevent these from happening again. But they're basically visible because they served the left's narrative. They've been pushing this narrative for decades, and whenever they have an opportunity to have a platform or to have somebody who can represent them, especially children like David Hogg, because it's harder to criticize them because they're children. So they hide behind that shield, right? So if David Hogg comes out and says some nasty things about Dana Lash and people criticize him for it, the left can come back and say, oh, you're criticizing kids, yada, yada, yada. Which that's victims. It's not a valid argument. It's something that they're using as a shield. But at the same time, to a certain number of Americans, that might be more persuasive or effective. So that's really why these kids are so visible now. They are useful to the left, at least for the time being.
It makes you think of the term useful idiots, huh?
Yeah, but before it was the dreamers, that they were the ones that were useful to the left. But then the shooting happened. The left said, oh, well, sorry, dreamers, let's go focus on these kids for a little bit.
Yeah.
But they will be back.
Got to care about the dreamers, though, man. They were in the spotlight. All of a sudden, they're out. All right.
The only body who's still talking about dreamers are us and President Trump.
Isn't it? He mentioned it clearly in the last spending bill. All right, so
Yes.
Last question, Jeff. How effective do you think this mass media campaign that's clearly using victims and children to further their personal agenda, but how effective do you think that it will be in the 2018 midterms in unseating conservatives?
This issue is not going to help them in the 2018 primaries. One, it is an issue that they haven't been winning on. Right. Even with this recent shooting, even with all the coverage of David Hogg and Emma Gonzalez and Cameron Kasky, this isn't going to carry on into the primaries. Most Americans are not for gun control in the way that the left wants it. Most Americans, they may favor background checks, but like I said before, a recent study showed that the majority of Americans favor more practical, sensible solutions that are being pushed by conservatives over just additional legislation that's designed to make us feel better. So if there are Republican congressmen who are unseated, it won't be because of gun control. Now, there may be some other issues that figure into that. There's also the fact that, the party that wins the White House, they typically do lose seats in the following primaries. But if that happens, it's not going to be because of gun control. But it's not going to keep the left from trying to use this as a weapon. I just don't think it'll be a very effective one.
Good. Great answer. Thank you. Right. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you. Very much appreciated. And thanks to you at home for watching. You can read Jeff's take on this. It's much more in depth. And of course, check out a whole host of articles, videos, radio, podcast right on libertynation.com. Go there now.
Liberty Nation. News and commentary, minus the propaganda. libertynation.com